This episode of Out of Spec Reviews is brought to you by Magna. More on that later. Good morning and welcome to beautiful, snowy Colorado here just in Bellevue, just outside of Fort Collins, Colorado. We are going to take the Rivian R1T up into the hills, into the clouds where they are currently getting dumped on with snow. The goal here, which is just an impromptu video because we got some snow this morning, is to see how this vehicle handles in cold weather, in slippery conditions, and of course on some snow and ice on some dirt roads. Of course, all of the efficiency testing you've been asking is happening later. It's not the best conditions for that. So let's go shred this up a canyon road, except not because it's going to be snowy, and see how the traction management works through some slippery conditions. By the way, this is our new vehicle we are testing this week. It is the Rivian R1T. It is the middle-size battery pack, so 135 kilowatt hours. They claim about 300 miles on a charge. We have not range tested it yet. This one costs, I think if you were to spec it today, near as makes no difference, about 100 grand. It's like 90 something. It does not have the camp kitchen, but we do have the tent on the back. It's got the all-terrain tires on it, which is perfect for these conditions. I'm looking forward to seeing how these Pirelli Scorpions do in cold weather. They are also, I believe, mountain snow peak rated, the triple peak rating. So they are a winter tire, and they also have an electric component, and they're an Rivian OE specific tire. So a lot of the slippery stuff comes down to, of course, the tires that are on the vehicle. This one also has 4 independent motors that are mounted inboard, which is really interesting. And that's what I'm mostly looking forward to seeing. You can, work with our friends, our sponsors over at Nokian to get some aggressive snow tires for this thing, I'm sure. But this is the factory tire, and it looks to be pretty good, and just my initial drive on sort of this wet slush has been amazing so far. This is such a good looking truck, isn't it? It is amazing. Some of you have been asking, like, how does the snow handle with the tonneau cover? Well, with the tent over top, it doesn't really have to block too much work. These buttons are covered up by the snow. I can't even find them. Where are they? Here. Let's take a look. Is the bed dry? Seems to be completely dry in there. So that is a win, I would say. Sweet. But you do have to get your hands dirty closing the tailgate. It's weird. I think it should have a power tailgate, but that's just me. I'm spoiled by that nice F-150 King Ranch we also have on test this week that just boop. Anyway, I'll show you around a little bit more. Again, 4 independent motors, and that's really the point of this test, to see how the traction management system handles everything. Lovely glass roof. Nice seats, amazing Meridian sound system. But what do you say we get out of this cold, got the Starbucks already, and go drive up some slippery conditions and see what kind of trouble we can get ourselves into. Before we do that, I actually want to clean off these headlights. You see, they don't produce that much heat. And so last night I was driving home from doing the charging test on this vehicle. I'm going to have multiple, so give it a few days for that to go up. And I saw basically no headlight action out of this thing, and it's because they were completely frosted over. I'm like, wow, these headlights really aren't good. And then I realized, oh, they're LED. They don't produce enough heat to, I guess, melt some of the snow off. So if you have one in slushy conditions, you got to keep wiping the headlights off. I can't say I've had to do that with many cars. I do have to do that with my Tesla. I have a Model 3, but I've driven other cars with LEDs that seem to heat up a little bit more. Anyway, not a huge deal. Just got to get out every, I don't know, a couple hours or something and wipe the headlights. Let's continue. This episode is proudly brought to you by Magna. Magna is a mobility technology company that is super unique because they touch every aspect of almost every car on the market, especially a lot of electric vehicles, and they even can produce vehicles from the ground up. Now, you may remember I shot a series just recently testing some of their new electric vehicle powertrains, so stay tuned for a lot of Magna content to come. We're going to be going in depth with some really interesting topics with these guys, and Out of Spec wants to thank Magna for sponsoring this review and tons of other videos to come right here on Out of Spec. We look forward to working with Magna to define and find out what the future of mobility looks like. So what do you say we head out and we start our journey? Let's do it. I have the vehicle in its sport mode right now. Let's take a look at our state of charge. We are at if I remember how to do it. 67% state of charge. Car sat outside overnight, so it's probably a little bit cold. Although I was driving it, I don't know, 6 hours before. It gives me full regen, so I don't think it totally cold soaked overnight. And we're just cruising through these little towns. So once we start climbing the hills, we'll get into a little bit more slush and snow, but here's a little bit of snow, for example, just to nail it. Incredible traction on that. That was insane. So a lot of this comes down to tire, like I mentioned, but also a lot of it comes down to its traction management. So we're going to play around with all the different modes as we gain elevation. And, you know, I'll give you my impressions after driving this vehicle for the last, I don't know, 200 miles, something like that. I drove it yesterday and did a Denver to Fort Collins and back, a lot of highway driving. And it is really good. Like, if you just want the short answer, so good. I'll tell you what's good about it, of course. The first is the suspension is insane. You know, I haven't really pushed this up a back road yet. We're certainly going to not do that in these conditions, but hopefully by the time before this truck goes back, this road will be dry and good to go, and I expect that to be the case so we can really hammer it. But just kind of pushing it around some off ramps, even with the tent on the back, it's super balanced, even if not a little bit oversteer biased when you're really leaning it up into corners. When you get into regen and load up the front axle, it starts to rotate a little bit. It's so good. It's like a sports car in a pickup truck in terms of driving dynamics. I have no other way of saying it. The steering is incredible. I've never felt steering this good in a long time, let alone in a truck with big meaty tires. I can only imagine what the steering response would be like on the 22-inch sport wheels. Granted, those are probably too heavy to really, I don't know, help with performance. What do you say we start with a launch, though? It's cold and no one's really around. So I heard the fastest way to launch it is sport lowest suspension. So we're going to drop it all the way down. There's no like official launch mode, but I'm going to put left foot hard on the brake. Whoa, all the way to the floor. That's a long brake pedal. Flooring it with the right, nothing happens. And 3, 2, 1. Oh, crazy. That's definitely quicker than just nailing it in all-purpose mode. I've heard in this vehicle a couple times, and you may have heard it there in sport. I don't want to adaptive cruise. Where there's a little clunk when you launch it at the initial point in all-purpose, and in sport it's less. I just think the suspension kinematics are better. Anyway, we're not here to test sport stuff. I'll continue giving my impressions though, just right off the bat from driving it. The noise levels in the cabin are okay. I'm going to actually measure them against other vehicles so you have accurate data. This one does have a little bit of wind noise. Ooh, Macan out for a rip in Mamba Green. Very nice. This one does have a slight wind noise from the passenger window, not ceiling. You don't hear it from the driver's seat, but I sat in the passenger seat earlier and I was like, oh, that's not the best. I'm going to put us into all-purpose mode and out of sport mode because now we're getting into slush. The sound system, to me, is one of the most impressive parts of this vehicle. You know, I've driven every truck on the market now, and I have to say the Meridian in this is unbelievably good. By far the best pickup truck, and I would say on par with some of the best sound systems in the business. Really, really good, especially if you go through the built-in Spotify app and use high bitrate streaming. You can select audio quality like extremely high, and it's like, whoa. And it really seems to do well with like classic rock songs, especially is sort of, I would say, where this system shines the best. Now we're getting into some slippery stuff, so I'll probably pause the video and we'll get into some deeper snow. But I would say, like, even this, just kind of nailing it coming out of corners, really, like, you can't even tell it's wet outside or slushy. Pretty insane. Truly insane, actually. Here we go, wide open. Wow, the traction management's great. All right, let's do a full ABS here on snow. Great brake pedal feel. Does a really good job. Let's just nail it from a stop. The motor sounds so healthy, and you can just hear it trying to put power where it thinks would be best. Super duper impressive coming out of a corner. It's unbelievable, the traction management. Really unbelievable. I've never driven anything that kind of drives like this before. All right, here we're just on straight snow. No need to cut the video. So understeer front axle's at its limit, and throttle does not add any rear rotation. So let's go into sport mode really quick and see if this prioritizes a little bit more rear motor. Yes, see that? See that? So in sport mode, it's definitely saying, hey, I'm gonna back the stability control off a little bit, even though it says it's on. And definitely more rear bias. Look, coming into this corner, look at that, right on the edge. That's full brakes. We're just on ice now. This is great. This is what I wanted. So limit of front axle grip, throttle, and a little bit of sideways action. Lovely. That's what we want. Let's go stability in reduced. So there's 3 levels of stability control: on, reduced, and off. And just because it's a blind corner, I'm not going to do anything crazy in case someone loses traction on the way out. But here we go. Throttle on. Oh yes, really good. What's amazing is you don't hear it grabbing brakes anywhere, and you don't really hear the motor spinning up or down. It's just, it feels like it knows exactly what it's supposed to do. This is a really grown-up powertrain control software, I would say, for being a brand new truck. That is insanely impressive, and that's why we don't shred around corners like that. So under light throttle, you can tell it's rear wants to go first in sport mode. That's pretty sweet. I want to try conserve mode. Conserve mode is front wheel drive only, I believe, but what I don't know is if that happens under wheel slip. So that will be kind of interesting to try out. So it's just raising us. I'm waiting for the suspension to come to standard now. So, okay, let's try a launch in conserve mode. I wish I had a power meter. I can feel like the front wheels were at the limit of traction under regen there. So wide open in conserve. Yeah, it's just front wheel drive. The car's barely moving. Let's see the traction control flashing. My foot's welded to the floor. So it's just turns into a front wheel drive vehicle. Even under wheel slip conditions, it doesn't use the rear motors at all. And so, I mean, this is slippery stuff for sure. Let's go into off-road mode now. I'm going to set stability to reduced, and I'm going to go to, I guess, auto off-road. So it's definitely designed for higher clearance with a softer ride on uneven paths. Okay, so this is just auto off-road mode. Let's give it the beans. Man, the motor sounds so good in this thing. And I mean, it's just super impressive. Brakes on the way in. The braking system is great in this vehicle. It's a little bit soft of a brake pedal, but certainly you can feel ABS. It's really nicely connected, and I believe it's a totally physically connected brake pedal based off of my initial impressions. Now, I was just sitting on the highway. I haven't done a ton of braking tests yet. We'll do that on the field. Let's just spin it. Under power, super 50-50 biased in this auto off-road mode. Definitely is not going for any oversteer, just a tiny bit of neutral steer maybe. And the nice thing is when you lift off, it gets the weight on the front and the back comes around. Look at this, just so balanced right on the edge. I mean, we're just like slipping around. It's fantastic. The interesting thing with auto mode is, or I should say, forget about that. What's interesting about driving this pickup truck in loose surfaces is it's different than any other pickup truck I've driven before, because you don't feel like there's all the weight on the front and nothing on the rear. It feels extremely balanced, which is so unique for having a truck, you know, just sort of be able to balance right along its center axis like this. Pretty impressive. I want to go into rally mode because that to me seems like the way to do it. So let's just get it in here a little bit. Wow, there's zero traction. This is straight ice. That's like welded to the floor and it barely wants to spin up. All the traction control, forward collision warning stuff's off here. Headlights are on. Full rally mode, come on. Definitely is pulling with the front a lot more than in other modes, even though it's so, what it does is it allows a little bit of rotation and then it starts pulling with the front to dig you out of a corner. So in, and there we go. I think we should just go no traction control, and with an EV you really need good throttle response, or I should say input, because they'll just spin to 1,000,000 miles an hour. Let's just see actually if it's truly off from a traction control perspective. You see, the problem with an EV, if you have full, like, no traction control logic, is if you start to spin up your tires on a low mu surface like this, a low traction surface, and you switch to a high traction surface, what can happen is the wheel catches, and that puts a ton of stress into your drive line, you know, your half shafts, into your motors. And so usually you can end up breaking motor mounts. Like i3s had those issues back in the day. All right, here, there's kind of no one around here. Regen doing a good job of managing itself with no traction, sort of ABS with regen, and foot down. So there is traction control even though it says it's off. So it just says stability off, which makes sense, and traction control is definitely on. Otherwise we would go on because my foot was welded. So I would say stability off might be the best program here as we just drive around in straight snow. This is wonderful. Here we go. Oh yes, full slides. It's so balanced and wonderful to just look. We're right on the edge here. It's so good. Wow. Call me like impressed. I know we're only going 20 miles an hour and it's not that like crazy exciting, but like just to be able to come out of corners in rally mode like this is one of the most unique experiences, because it's sort of like Tesla's track mode where I can dial in, okay, I want this much rotation, that much rotation, but here we're doing it in kind of like a 7,000 pound truck, just kind of angle and then straighten out. And rally mode does try and straighten you out because of course rally's all about loose surface and hammering. And so, you know, you really want to use that front axle a lot in a rally situation. And so it can do that here. Coming through, look at that, just right on the edge, super easy. We're sliding with no hands on the wheel. It's so balanced. Wow. I know I keep saying the same thing, but this is like the coolest freaking thing ever. We're just like drifting around. Little angles too, nothing major, just little whoop, 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 whoop. So good. Anyway, well, there you have it. I think the off-road modes we've tried pretty well. Is there anything else we should try? Let's go down a dirt road, shall we? So this is like a legit dirt road. It says private road, use four-wheel drive. Well, now we're on like a legit. So let's try, okay, I'm gonna drive it like a normal person. Let's go to auto, off-road auto, which I imagine is where you kind of want to be. We'll go to the one down from the highest ride height. Icy roads, four-wheel drive, or chains required. Let's just see how it does on some of this deep powder stuff. I mean, this is legit snow we're driving through here, snowmobile style. So, suspension, unbelievably soft, I have to say. More so than I actually remember driving it. It's not as smooth as the EQS off-road. That was a whole nother world, but it definitely is magically smooth on some of this really beat up surface. Pretty impressive for sure. Wow, and we're just climbing this thing like nothing. It's going straight up. So we're hitting some big bumps, doesn't care, it's taking it. Honestly, I haven't even aired down for this just because we're driving up like someone's driveway. Like, you shouldn't have to air down for this, but if we were gonna take it trail riding, I probably would drop the pressures down to 30-ish PSI for even something like this if we were gonna do it for a long time, just to smooth out the ride. Of course, we're running about 48 PSI. Under normal temps, it's cold out, it's 27, so they're probably down a bit. I think I can actually check the tire pressures here. They're 44, yep. So that's foot to the floor, and it's just crawling its way straight up. It is a little bit of an awkward feeling because maybe I need to take time to get used to the powertrain management, but it is nice sometimes to just lock the diffs, and then you can sort of know exactly all wheels are going to spin at the same exact you know, speed, which would be nice. But I mean, this is like we're just driving to Starbucks in the morning type thing. Like, who even cares? And we're up here in the middle of the woods cruising up some pretty serious trails. I mean, steep and ice and snow. I'd be curious to see how it does on the way down. We'll try that. Just hammering it up here. What's our state of charge? We probably burned quite a bit, 59. And it's so gorgeous up here, isn't it? Yeah. Future out-of-spec ranch needs to be around here somewhere. Look at this, just literally walking straight up, fresh powder with no care in the world. Wow. Amazing. Let's bust a U-turn here and head on down, shall we? So that's foot down, and it's just sort of almost a little bit of tank turn there. I wish it allowed a little bit more wheel spin in these slippery conditions, if I'm honest, because that was foot down. I was like, come on, spin up a little bit. I wonder if there's so there's off-road, auto, rock crawl, rally, and drift. There's no like mud mode. I think we need like a mud snow mode for those at Rivian who are watching, to basically say, I'm also going to put the stability control from on down into reduced, just to allow some little bit more wheel spin, because it just felt a little bit held back to me, in at least in auto mode, and maybe there's a better one. So that's regen, slipping, and it's locked the wheels. So that was not great logic there. Did you see that? It basically locked the rear wheels. I had to go onto the throttle. And there we go. Completely sliding there on regen. Huh. That is not good. I expected it to have a little bit better low speed logic where it would pull back. You know, basically the idea with regen, what you want it to do is to, you know, hold you at the lowest possible wheel speed where you're not necessarily, you know, locking, because you always want a little bit of rotation to maintain control. And it definitely was not doing that, and I had to apply throttle to unlock the wheels. So maybe this slippery mode, like this snow mode, could be really useful to add through all of this is software able to be tuned. And perhaps I should try a different mode, because there's regen, and now it's doing the, well, it does it to about 7 miles an hour and then locks the rear axle. Watch, off throttle. Definitely pulsing. You can see the regen's pulsing. I'm off everything, regen's in high, and there's rear axle completely locked. Wow, that's kind of weird. I didn't expect that. That's very, for like your average person, that's not good. Let's try a different setting. Let's try rock crawl. Hold turned off. Okay. Oh, now it's really locking the rear axle. Yeah, for sure. All four just locked there. So rock crawl is not the move. Let's go regen in standard, which is kind of what you would want. So now we're in rally mode, regen in standard. Why does it say 20 miles an hour max? Not sure. Now it's gone away. Maybe that was a rock crawl setting thing. All right, so rock crawl is not the answer for slippery surface. I have to say that is a surprise. So now it's doing regen through ABS, and the rear's locked at 6, which is just a little bit unnerving. Especially as there's someone behind us. I don't want to like slam on the brakes too much. I don't want to make them have to ditch their vehicle. Anyway, okay. Rally mode seems to feel the best, honestly, in this loose surface stuff, and regen in standard makes a big difference. So I guess if you're going to drive in snow, at least for now, if you own a Rivian, just regen in standard would be my recommendation based off of this little test. But I have to say its capability and its powertrain control under throttle is really good. Although I would like some more wheel spin, the braking is quite odd. Now, if I go into full ABS, I mean, that's full brakes. We just have no traction. So maybe you want a little bit more of an aggressive tire as well, to be honest. Yeah. Good on the way up, but it's a lot of weight to stop on the way down, that's for sure. And just be prepared. Like if you start to slide in this thing, you know, gentle throttle just to unlock everything. So just be mindful of that, because, you know, a locked wheel isn't going to give you any traction anywhere, really. What an interesting experience. Heated steering wheel's wonderful. And not much steering wheel sort of feedback or input when you hit these bumps, even on one side. Watch, you can see a little bit, but not much wheel wobble on the way in. I'm forgetting all my words this morning. Wheel wobble. But then when you get the speed up, it kind of likes this stuff. This stuff it's doing really well on. Well, there you have it. Should we head back down the mountain? Because we got to do some towing tests today. I got to charge this thing up and talk about towing efficiency in a future video. I have to say, though, the suspension, when you put the ride in soft, is truly stellar. Rally mode. Let's go rally mode. Traction off. Stability off. And make sure no one's coming. And power out of here. Full power. Nice skids. And as soon as I counter steer, it says, okay, front axle rotation, or front axle power. Interesting powertrain control here on loose surface. Had a good time on that little dirt road, and we learned a lot. I learned a lot about the low speed calibration. It's really not great in very slippery, deep snow under braking, at least with regen in high. Because if I lift off here, you can see the regen pulsing, which means it says, oh, we're locking a little bit. I'm going to back off regen. And it's basically keeping you at the maximum amount of deceleration rate that you can have without locking a wheel, just like ABS in theory would do, right? And so ABS uses a physical mechanical braking system that pulses the brake and lets go a little bit and varies pressure. This is just using the electric motor regen and sort of, you know, you can see holding it right on the edge, but you can see it gets you right perfect amount of deceleration force in rally mode to just like tuck the car in a little bit on the front, and then you can power out. So like the calibration a lot. And there you have it, Rivian in a loose surface. We learned a little bit about some of the modes. We tried all-purpose. We tried sport a little bit. Conserve, front wheel drive, not the mode for snow, but interesting that it doesn't apply rear axle help even under ultimate wheel slip conditions. And then we also tried, rally and drift. Rally with stability off and the ride in soft and the regen in standard is my recommendation for a snowy blast. Again, I've only driven it 20 minutes in the snow, maybe not even, because I can come out of a corner like this and just hammer it. Little angles, the way it should be. Little angles everywhere in a big truck. Heavy truck, not so big. Thanks for watching another out of spec reviews video. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.